I just came in today quickly to talk about HTML5 and what it means for gaming and what is cooking at the moment, what you can use. And I feel a bit fish out of water here because I don't do games. I do a few games in my free time and things like that. And I used to write games on Commodore 64. So I knew every single chip and I knew every single register and everything what we can do there. And I don't meet many people anymore that write assembly language, which is kind of good because it means we evolved in terms of developer tools, but it's kind of sad because I haven't kept up with it. So my job is in Mozilla, I'm the HTML5 guy, which is good to work for a company like Mozilla because we're a non-for-profit organization, so I can work with Microsoft, I can work with Google, I can work with Adobe, I can work with all of them and make sure that we release our things as public standards rather than just building things for ourselves and making it hard for the developer in the end to build things across platforms, because that's always the big ghost for, or the big scary thing for people who come from native platforms to the web, that there's too many differences. So if you think about gaming on the web, just a few years ago, it was basically just Flash. There was nothing else to be done. There were a few like DOM games that you could do, or demo games, like everybody who did a JavaScript course has to write a game about a dice sooner or later. And that's basically what we had. And Flash was a great breakthrough because we had the high fidelity of games that you saw on the desktop back then, what we called high fidelity back then, in the browser. The problem was then that actually a lot changed, and out of a sudden Flash was not the thing that we could use anymore because the big thing came out. We moved into a mobile market. And a lot of people now, when they get on the web the first time, they don't have a desktop machine, they start with a mobile phone or with a tablet. And the iPhone didn't have Flash, so a lot of the knowledge of web gaming and a lot of the things that we've done before just didn't work anymore. And it started really well for me as a guy who loves the web to bits, because when he went on stage in 2007 and he revealed the first iPhone, he basically said, like, this is the phone reinvented. It's not those Nokias, it's not those Samsungs, it's not those old phones that you have, and it does not come with an SDK. He said that. There's no SDK, it's just the web. He said there's the Safari on there, which is the best browser in the world, which of course can be debated. But he just said, no SDK needed, just use the web. You can get telephone calls, you can go to a map, you can do all kinds of things. And then we tried it out and we realized not so much because I couldn't access the hardware I wanted to. I didn't have hardware acceleration. I couldn't do all the things that on the web I could do on a desktop already. And out of a sudden I had this really cool piece of hardware with lots and lots of memory and lots of a fast processor and almost a working microphone. And I could not access it. And I was just standing there, this is frustrating. And we got blinded by these products. It's still one of the most successful pieces of hardware out there. And everybody just started building for iPhone only. There's lots of web interfaces out there that only work on an iPhone. And out of a sudden Samsung came around with a lot of Android phones that are as good. And then you get an interface catered for an operating system inside another operating system that doesn't make any sense to you. And a few years down the line, a few months down the line, you will look like this guy who was really happy about Windows 95 when you just build things for one platform out there. And of course, a lot of truisms came out then. Okay, the iPhone uses WebKit. Google uses WebKit for Chrome, so WebKit is the only thing you have to care for. No other browser will ever be around. Who uses Windows products? Who uses Internet Explorer? Almost nobody, except it's almost everybody. Who uses Firefox? Nobody. And then, out of a sudden, Google dropped the hammer and Opera as well, saying like, okay, we're moving Chrome to another rendering engine. It's not going to be the same as you have in Safari. And out of a sudden, all these developers that only build for one platform realized that will never be the case. And if you want reach, if you want to get your products out to people, you have to actually go to where people are. And you cannot just say, oh, you have to download one browser and install this and install that. Because, yeah, you expect a lot from people that can get the same information somewhere else. The big thing that I'm doing right now is talk to developers about porting their apps to HTML5 and to our new platform. And everybody asks me, like, where's the SDK? Where's the IDE? When you come from an environment where you build for a native environment, you have an SDK, you have an IDE, you start with that. And I confuse people when I say, like, well, there isn't any, it's the web. Use whatever editor you want to use. There's a few libraries that you can use to make things easier, but you want to keep it as simple as possible and as flexible as possible to reach as many people as possible. And the cool thing about nowadays is that in browsers, we've got these great inbuilt tools. So the consumption device, which is the browser for our end users, is also our developing device. And that one broke the gap that we had before, that we had different browsers than our end users, which was always a big problem. So nowadays, in any browser, made Internet Explorer, Opera, Chrome, Safari, I can actually right-click something and start inspecting it. And then I get the source code of the page, I get the computed CSS, I get the rules of the CSS, I can edit them live and see what the changes are. I can even see the fonts that have been used and if they have been loaded properly or not. I've got a timeline that shows me if everything has been loaded. In Firefox, I even have this wonderful thing called a responsive view, where I can actually preview my design in different sizes of different phones and different tablets. I've got a 3D view, which just shows me how deep my DOM is and if I've done something wrong in my HTML, which looks a bit like a toy, but it's actually not bad for debugging if you look at performance and these kind of things. So all these tools are actually in the browser and I don't have to worry about loading something or installing something extra. And that has been a big change for a lot of developers because they're always like, oh, how do I set a breakpoint in JavaScript? How do I know what my variables are? And all of these things in there. And they're growing every day. Like Chrome puts lots and lots of stuff in their developer tools. Every week there's something new. And I love that because it also still shows people that the web is read and write and not only just read and consume. Everybody can learn from tricks of other people. And we can learn from mistakes of other people as well. The other day, the download page of Chrome was offline for half a day because they actually relied on JavaScript not to ever throw an error. And their own reporting system threw an error, and out of a sudden that button that just called a JavaScript didn't do anything. So they learned from that. Now there's a landing page where you can download all the Chrome versions. You've got detailed control over what's happening in Chrome and also in Firefox and in Safari. You can see what the browser does under the hood. Like, is there a new draw happening? Is the frame rate? What's the frame rate? What's going on there? Where's the timing going? Why did it take so long that things were loaded? What was loaded that I didn't need? So you have all the control in the browser nowadays, and it's great that they come with that. So browsers are really, really awesome, and all of them are cool. And the only problem I have with is when a browser gets tied to an operating system and cannot get upgraded any longer. And you would think that's a Microsoft attack, but actually it's more about Android. The Android stock browser is an awful piece of outdated software in older versions of Android. Chrome for Android is amazing. Firefox for Android is great. Opera for Android is great. But the stock browser is the new Internet Explorer 6 thing that we have to fight for the next 5 years. So what we thought in Mozilla is we need a better platform for HTML5 because iOS promised us a lot of stuff, didn't do it. Android promised us a lot of things, but leaves lots of people on old Androids behind because the browser cannot get updated any longer unless they install Firefox or Opera, which of course is quite a barrier that lots of people don't do, but I would love people to do that more. So what we did was we came up with Firefox OS, and 2 years ago this was an empty repository on GitHub. Everything in there is open source, everything can be contributed to. And now, last year we showed it at Mobile World Congress and said, like, here's an operating system that's completely open source, running on a platform where other operating systems would not be possible any longer because it's not fast enough. Because we want to go and bring the mobile web to people that cannot afford it and cannot have it right now, and that is Firefox OS. It's upgrading the mobile world. We don't want to compete with iOS and Android because you can't. It's good luck if you want to go to the high-end market of hardware in the mobile space and compete with those two. There's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of work involved. What we want to do is replace these old feature phones, these things that people have in their hand and get excited for playing Snake for the last 2 weeks and get text messages and calls and these kind of things and nothing else. So we're targeting new emerging markets, South America, Eastern Europe, and this is a great opportunity for anybody who wants to be on that platform because these people don't have the comparison. They don't say like, oh, this is slower than my iPhone 5 because they don't get an iPhone 5. In most of these countries, they're not available or they're just not affordable. And if you spend 6 months of your wage for your first phone, you're going to be very pissed off if in 2 months' time it's already outdated. So we want to make sure that these systems are actually updated continuously as well. It's very affordable hardware. So if you want to get a developer phone right now, a developer preview is about €90. It's a 1 gigahertz Snapdragon processor, 256 meg of RAM. And it's comparable to an iPhone 3 in terms of like what is in the hardware itself. Another big thing is that there's no credit card needed. You can do client billing. So basically people without a credit card can buy your apps and get them on a telephone bill at the end of the month. Or parents can buy a SIM card with €50 on them, give it to their kid, and they have a phone with €50, and next morning you don't wake up and your kid has racked up €10,000 on your credit card or something like that. Also, if the kid drops the phone in the toilet, €50 are gone, and not like 6,000 or whatever. And it's web technologies through and through. There's no Cocoa in there, there's no Java in there. There's C, there's a Gong core, which is basically the same Linux core that Android has. So if you can do things on Android, you can actually access the file system on a Firefox OS device as well. But everything works in HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS, which for web developers is a dream come true. And for other people, it just shows that these technologies are powerful enough to do these things. We've got 18 mobile partners and 4 hardware partners. That was an old slide. We've got 6 hardware partners, including Foxconn now as well, and 20 mobile partners in 8 different countries. July is going to be the first month where the first phones come out to end users. So you could have done something a year ago. You won't be the first one, but you can still play with us. And everything in the hardware is accessible from JavaScript. Telephony, text messaging, geolocation, WebGL 3D rendering, the camera, USB port, contacts, full screen API, settings API. All of these things are not Firefox only. These are web standards that we propose to the W3C and to the What Working Group. And a lot of these APIs are available in other browsers as well. Because we're not there to promote Firefox, we're there to keep the web open. And the more browsers support this stuff, the better it is. There's a marketplace because people like marketplaces. That's good because it's the same thing as everybody else, 70-30 split. People can find their stuff. You can recommend things. You have reviews. You got your listings everywhere else. But somehow it wasn't disco enough for us because marketplaces to me don't scale. It's an SEO game. You have to actually start advertising a lot. You have to pay a lot of money to write fake reviews and love your game and these kind of things. And it feels to me like 2cows or download.com a few years ago. Or Yahoo directory before we did the Yahoo search box. Like you click 5 times and then you find the game about football. And you're like, why don't you just enter football? And this is what we put in there. It's actually called a adaptive search. We call it this month. There might be a change in that name. But what it does, it actually brings your app to the use case rather than the use case to the app. So I just go into my search, and I don't search only what's on my hard drive, but actually on my mobile, but actually the web. So if I enter a band name here, for example, Linkin Park, I can start clicking an app for music, and I can start listening to that song. I don't need to know the name of the app. I don't need to know who built it. I can try this thing out, and when I like it, I install it. If I don't like it, I discard it. You can type in, you can find Wikipedia, you can find Songkick for tickets, for example. You can also enter titles of movies, Skyfall, for example, the Bond movie here, and you find IMDb. And all of the time you do that search and you click it, you get it contextual. So the search that you put in goes into the app as well, rather than just like going to the front page of the app and then having to type in your search again. So we made app discovery as simple as searching the web. And this is incredibly powerful. It's great for publishers because you can actually show up if you just have a good app rather than like having to pay a lot for main listing. And just for entering chicken, you find top table, for example. So it's contextual in native language as well. The other day I was in Poland and I entered like a band name, and out of a sudden I found an app that is only available in Poland that I didn't know about. But then I could listen to that song on the Polish network with a free streaming service there. So instead of making the user go to the marketplace, find an app, download 25 megabyte of app, install it, hate the interface, uninstall it, try the next one, your mobile optimized HTML versions of your sites become your advertisement. So if you're a games company and you're actually found in Google quite nicely, you can just put a manifest file on your page and you can advertise your apps from your page rather than having to go through the marketplace as well. And this is what a manifest looks like. The name, description, launch path, your icons, who the developer is, and then you have lots of settings what you want to access on the hardware. Like, do you want access to the address book? Do you want access to these kind of things? There's 3 levels of access. We cannot allow every app in JavaScript to access everything because JavaScript is insecure for that. It's not a good idea. So we have hosted apps. They're stored on your server, easy to upgrade, limited access. They get everything that HTML5 gets and some extra bits and bobs. We've got privileged apps. These are the ones that we have to be hosted from a Mozilla server because we control these servers and we don't control yours. We don't know how secure your server is, and we cannot allow you to do all kinds of things there. And certified apps are the ones that partners work with us on or Mozilla builds directly. These are the ones that get full access to the metal, get everything in the mobile device. Now, hosted apps, the ones that you put on your server, have all the things that a normal website has, but a lot of other things as well. Like geolocation is an old hat. Vibration API is really good for gaming. That basically when you get out of a puzzle game, it starts vibrating. Open web app installation, I'm going to show that in a second. Battery status is very important because maybe you want to turn off these animations when the battery is at 20% and let the guy play another 3 hours, not like Temple Run eating my battery in like 2 seconds. Push notifications. Hey, there's a new update. Hey, there's a new sheep in your farm, whatever. Web payment API. You can actually start getting in-app payments, and this is an open framework for web payments, which is actually working with lots and lots of payment providers in different countries. Ambient light sensor. How dark is it outside? Notifications, screen orientation, mouse lock, network information, alarm. Web FM. We did research in South America. Everybody listens to radio on their phone. I've never seen anybody do that here. But we needed to put an FM API in there, and now we've got an open web standards for Web FM. Really cool. If you want to send data over radio waves, great idea. IndexedDB, 50 meg of data stored in a real database, rather than just in the local storage thing that we did have before, which was a key index store. Proximity sensor knows how far 2 phones are from each other or how far the user is from the phone. So there's really cool things for gaming in there as well. Now, if you don't want to go through the marketplace, you just want to install an app from the web, this is what you do. Navigator, Moz apps, install, point to the manifest, you get an on success handler, you got an on error handler. So you can make your website your install platform. And I do that for testing the whole time because I don't want to wait until they're listed in the marketplace. Privileged apps can then get to device storage, so you can store things on the on the SD card. A browser API, so you can browse inside your app and have a browser built inside it. TCP socket, if you do any chat systems or if you do any data in the background. Contacts API to create contacts or to reach contacts. And System XHR means that you can actually access content on the web without having to go through CORS or iframes or all kind of tricks. Certified apps, the ones that we build and our partners build, get access to the rest of the hardware. But in most of the cases for a game, you wouldn't need any of these things. Of course, when you tell people that, then they're like, yeah, but you said you're open. Why can't I access all of that? Security. It's really up to our users not to get their data leaked onto the web. So we want to make sure that the user knows what's going on. And that's what I hate about native platforms right now. If you build a game, you have to ask for all permissions up front, because later on you cannot change that. And that's why everything asks for everything. And I'm like, this is a puzzle game. No, it shouldn't make telephone calls for me in the background. I don't want that. But you have to ask it up front. In this case, you can change it continuously. Another thing we do is web activities, which is a bit like web intents. It used to be in Chrome before they shut it down. It's instead of my app asking for permission to make a telephone call, I just ask the user to make the call for me. And this is not like iOS where I just have a tel domain that sends me to the dialer, but it's a full loop. So I basically send to the phone, do the telephone call, hang up, and then I go back to my app and I get an object that says like how long the call was, which telephone number I called, and so on and so forth. So you have a full go out to what the user likes to use something with, and then go back. So in this case, I asked for a photo, and I don't care what app you use to take photos with. I don't care if you get it from your wallpaper folder or your images folder. I just want a photo, I just want a picture. So I like that because you give full control to the end user and don't actually authenticate on their behalf. And we shouldn't have to do that. Just for sharing something on the web, I shouldn't have to authenticate with Twitter for you. That's why Twitter is full of like hacked accounts and these kind of things. Web activities. is configuration, it's dialing, it's picking, it's saving a bookmark, viewing, cost control, open record share, and web SMS and web contact. So getting an image from the phone, for example, is as simple as that. Get photo, new Moz activity, pick image PNG, image JPEG, so it's basically the MIME types. And according to which MIME type you send through here, it actually gives you an image, or it gives you an audio file, or it gives you a video, or it gives you a text. And once you have it, an on-success handler, create an element, get the result blob, put it inside the image, and you're done. So I don't need to know where you store your photos. I don't want to authenticate for you with Flickr. I just want to have a photo. And these are the 5 lines of JavaScript that make that work. Of course, this works on Android as well. So that's great if you don't have a Firefox OS phone. So if you have Firefox installed on your Android, these activities work on Android. So that's why I'm testing in my Nexus 4. Problem with that is my Nexus 4 is basically a Formula 1 car compared to the tractor that we're selling people. So your testing will be much, much better than you think about. So you have to have something that has the same specifications to actually optimize your game accordingly. And the great thing is, the worse your hardware, the more you have to optimize, the better it will be on the final platform as well, and on the better platforms. You can always go faster, you cannot go slower. So that's why the first round of Chromebooks that Google gave out internally were awful, to actually teach their engineers to write really fast code for Chrome. It's really interesting to how you can punish your developers with free hardware. So if you're interested in that, and who wants to reach millions of new people, there's a few things where I can go to. There's the Developer Hub. That's the first start in Firefox OS. It's a marketplace developer, marketplace.firefox.com/developers. There you have design guidelines. These are not enforced, but here's what a good HTML5 app for a screen this size is about. You've got building blocks, so you have a quick start guide, you have a few libraries that you can use, you have a few demo apps that you can just download and change to your needs. There's a few game stubs as well. And then information about how to publish. Publishing is easy. You put your app somewhere. You actually give us the URL to the manifest and the manifest tells us what you want to access. If you want access to nicer APIs, we package it up for you and host it in the marketplace. If you don't, then we keep it on your server and it's totally fine. So there's a 3-step process to publish something on this. The review at the moment takes about a week or 2 to come back to you. That might get more if we hire more people and we actually get more successful in hiring people to review things. And the uptake is incredible. We're just right now, I'm going to come to that in a second actually. If you want to play with it without hardware, there's a simulator in the browser. This is what it looks like. It's basically the simulator here. I could do the live thing that I showed earlier. If I enter U2 here as a band and I search, you get a picture of U2 and you get after you set where you are, you actually get the apps that have to do with music and Firefox OS from the web right now. All of these are the previews. So this is now the mobile optimized version of SoundCloud that I load in there. Can listen to it. If I like it, I install the app. If not, I discard it. And especially in markets, emerging markets where you pay per data, it's very, very important that these previews are really small rather than downloading the full app. You got your full error messaging here as well. You can also, when you connect the phone, you can send your app to the phone from the simulator without having to go through ADB and command line and all kind of things. So it's 90% of the way you can actually go with the emulator without having to do anything yourself. So I've built a few apps, like Letter Paint is something that I wrote the other day on a plane, which basically is a little game for kids to start painting letters. And if you try that out in the emulator here yourself, it probably crashes. Yes, it does, because it's on GitHub and I'm not online for that. But it's a simple way to start with it and to play with it and get a feel for it. Of course, you have no touch, you have no accelerometer, you have none of the things that make it actually interactive with the game itself. There's on GitHub, there's a Firefox OS boilerplate that has all the functionality as stubs. So you basically can try them out there, and if you don't like them, remove those buttons and put your code inside the stubs to do the other things for you. And of course, developers wanted phones. So we're like, okay, so where do we get phones? Well, we had a few Android phones that had the same specifications that we found in Turkey or someplace like that where they sold them. but it was not good enough. So we partnered with geeksphone.com, which is a Spanish company that are building these Kion phones here, which are the right specification, and they cost €90 plus postage and packing. They're sold out at the moment, but they're building another one, and the feedback was incredible. We just like, okay, let's see what people think. How about you send us your app ideas, and we send you one of those phones to test with? Good idea, right? 2 days later, 7,000 app ideas came in and people wanted to have their phones. So I've got these wonderful Excel sheets to go through right now and say, okay, that's an app that we want to support, and that's an app we don't want to support. And there's interesting stuff like, there's like, oh, I want to build an app when the trash is being picked up in my little village in Wales. I know it's I know it's quite not the audience that you normally go for, but people will be really excited about it. So I emailed him back and said, like, well, talk to your council then. If they actually buy a phone for everybody working in the village, then we can actually talk about that. But just for one village, not so much. And that's the phone stuff. That's Firefox OS. That's exciting and raw and everything. But what about desktop? Desktop web, where did that go? What's going on with Flash? We worked with Epic Games and Electronic Arts and Disney and a few other people, and at a few game conferences we released the Unreal Engine in JavaScript the other day. So what you're seeing here is now a video, because I didn't want to fry my computer while I'm actually showing it to you. But what we did, we got the Unreal Engine 3. In 4 days, we ported it to JavaScript. So what you see here is not a plugin. What you see here is not Flash. It's not native client. It's core JavaScript in the browser. Any browser that runs JavaScript can run the 3D engine of Unreal right now. It's now optimized for Firefox, but Chrome allows it as well. Chrome at the Google I/O talked about ASM.js as well. So there's two things in there. There's mscripted, which allows you to convert LLV bytecode coming from C++ or C into JavaScript. And ASM.js is a subset of JavaScript that is optimized for speed, that does a lot of like pre-rendering and these kind of things that JavaScript would normally do on the fly. So what we managed to do with that is port, for example, PDF renderers in the browser. We managed to play back MP3s in the browser without having to go through a codec, but actually do it in JavaScript directly. And we ported the Unreal Engine and Banana Bread 3D engine and a few others to the browser right now. So this is for people who don't want to write JavaScript, but are really good in C++ and C, and have a lot of stuff already going. You can convert your stuff to JavaScript and run it in the browser without having to learn something new. And that is actually really powerful. And I think it's very important to let people play where they're happy, rather than trying to re-educate them to say, like, you only do it on JavaScript now, and poor C++ guys start crying and throwing things at you. So what else is cooking? A lot, almost daily something. Look at HTML5 rocks, look at hacks.mozilla.org, look at all of the, well, follow me on Twitter if you are okay with a lot of traffic on Twitter. Optimizing JavaScript game for Firefox OS, we just did a blog post that shows you a lot of tricks how to actually get down to that level of hardware and still be very responsive. And please come to me and play with it. One thing we ported, for example, is Cut the Rope. So we're working on that one quite nicely, and it works quite fine. I mean, this is a 60 frames per second rate is totally possible, even just by converting something that was done for another browser, because that was a demo for Internet Explorer 9 to show how cool that browser is. And we worked with Septo Labs, and they were really excited about porting it over. WebRTC data channels for P2P multiplayer. So WebRTC is the way to do a peer-to-peer connection between two computers over the web, which everybody uses for video calls and telephone calls, but you can also use that for data channels in your games. So we can do a World of Warcraft style game in the browser that way. Full screen API, of course, that's been around for a while. Pointer lock API to make sure that your mouse cursor doesn't get in your way when you're in a 3D world. Gamepad API to use joysticks and use game controllers with your browser. Native client shows a lot of that stuff as well. Chrome has a lot of these things imported as well. So think about the web, and especially with Firefox OS, as a whole new audience, because Apple are not going to go there. Android are not going to go there and give them their highest, coolest, newest hardware for a really cheap price and say, like, because you're lovely. We want these people on the web. That's what we're here for. And that's why we bring out this operating system and bring out this hardware and have hard discussions with hardware partners saying, like, oh, we want to go to the high end and make a lot of money. Like, no, we want to make it affordable for people. It's HTML5 without the lockout, not the promises that we had in the past and then like accelerometer for you. No. Your website is your ad. Like if you already are on the web, you already can advertise for your games and apps that way. That's how easy it is because of that adaptive search. We made app discovery surfing the web rather than just going through a marketplace. Minimal extra work, it works across platforms, and that's all I got time for, so thanks very much.